Hello and welcome to the first video of my React Native tutorials. So in this video, I'll initialize a new React Native project and then add and configure all the tools I think everyone should use. And to be a professional developer, we must follow some standards and conventions which help us write much better code and create a great product. So that being said, let's get started. So I'm not going to use Expo as I want to also teach you how to make native modules in my future videos, and I also want to quickly be able to push my app on the App Store. So I'm going to use the React Native CLI here and not the Expo one. And I'm not going to go through all this setup as it is well written here itself, and I already have this setup on my machine. So yes, this is the command to create a new React Native project, right? But I'm going to use the Typescript template rather than plain JavaScript, as I prefer Typescript because Typescript will help you remove unnecessary bugs and you'll type the cleanest and understandable code, and it looks very professional as well. And I think every JavaScript developer should be taking advantage of TypeScript. So let me just copy this and open my command prompt. Let me move to the directory where I want to create my project. Yeah, now I'll paste the command. And let's change the name to just awesome app. Okay, and press enter. All right, so the application is initialized and you can see some commands to run it on iOS as well as Android, right? So let's run the app on an Android emulator. So I'll first move into the project directory. And then run the Android command. Okay, so while this is running, let's open up Visual Studio Code and let us check the structure of our initialized application. So let's open the folder. It's in tutorials, awesome app. So okay, so there are 4 folders here and few files. So the tests folder will include all the tests you will write, although it's not necessary to write all the tests in it. We might also create another folders later in the application for different kinds of tests like end-to-end tests. And then the Android folder consists of native Android project, which you can open in Android Studio. And also if you might need to do some configuration in the Android app or to write native modules, right? Same goes for the iOS. And this folder can be opened in Xcode to configure the iOS application, right? The node modules folder is where the libraries and dependencies are saved. When we install a new library, all the files and its dependencies are downloaded into this folder. if you open the git ignore file, you can see that node modules is ignored, and we don't need to commit and push it, as we can download them using npm install command. Okay, so the rest of the files are all configuration files for various tools and libraries required by React Native as well as the developers. We will be working with the ESLint, Prettier, Babel, and tsconfig files. The package.json file is where we configure our application and list scripts and dependencies. And the tsconfig file is where we modify Typescript features as required. And I don't think I need to explain about the other files such as Babel, as you can go through their websites and learn more about what exactly they are used for. Like, okay, so the index.json file is where we register our application, right? And the app.tsx file is where the actual application code is. You don't necessarily need to write your code in app.tsx, but it is a standard way to do so. So let's see if our app has run. Okay. So our app is running in the Android emulator now. And as you can see on the device, this is the result of the template code which is in this app.tsx file. So as you can see in index.js, app is imported from app.tsx and it is registered here. But you don't really need to do that. Let's say I create a function here called app, and I just want to show hello world in my app instead of all this. So what I do is I'll just return one text component which is imported from React Native, and which will show hello world, and I'll comment this line of code and then save the file. So this is giving error because we can't use JSX components without importing React. So let me just import that. And save. Yeah, that's it. So I don't need this app.tsx. I can just create my app in this file only and just provide it here, right? This is okay if I just need to show hello world in my application, right? But usually it's not the case, so we write much bigger code, and the good practice is to fragment the code as much as possible. So, or let's just revert this code. Okay, and now the app.tsx code is back. So let me remove some code from this file which I don't need. I don't need styles, So I'll add a text here. And that's it. Yeah. So this is the same thing we did in our index file, right? So what I'm doing is writing this code and exporting it from this file and importing it here. So cool, that works. So I hope you got a basic understanding of the structure of the application and what are all these files for. So before moving further, I want to configure a few things. As a developer, I want to follow the best practices and latest conventions followed by the many great developers in the world. So let's say I'm working with a team of developers and I want my repository to be clean and standard. So I need to take advantage of some tools which can help me keep my GitHub repo in a good shape. And I need to force everyone to use the same configurations so it doesn't mess up the code while merging. So I'm going to add some scripts which will run when a developer commits the code, and if they fail, the commit will not succeed. And by this way, the developer is forced to fix everything before committing the code. And this way I can guarantee that my GitHub repo will not have broken code. So these are the steps which I'm going to follow. So let's get started by adding a script for type checking. So in package.json in the scripts section, I'll add type check. So the command to type check the code is npx tsc, and let's give it this alias. Let's save. Let me open a terminal and let's try running this command now. npx tsc. So as you can see, there are some errors in the library files in node modules. So they are mostly from the d.ts files, which are called type definition files. So we can avoid this, so there's a setting which we need to change in the tsconfig file, okay, where we can skip checking the type definition files. So let's do that. Here you can see skip lib check, right? It says skip type checking of declaration files. So let me change it to true. Okay, save, and let's try the command again. Let's try the script command now. npm run type check. So this will run this same command, and now the errors are gone. Now let me show what kind of errors we can avoid committing using type checking. Okay, why is this important? So let's go into our app.tsx. Let me try to initialize a variable here. Let x equals 2. So now x is a number, right? And let me reinitialize x with a string 1. So as you can see, obviously VS Code is complaining that there is an incorrect type assignment. So let's save and try to run the command again. So as you can see, this type check is also showing the same error. app.tsx type 1 is not assignable to number because it is a string. We can't assign a string to a number variable, right? So this is how it will force us to remove such TypeScript errors from our code, right? So unless we fix these errors, we will not be able to commit the code. Let's move on to the next step, which is okay, Prettier. So let's install Prettier now using this command. Note that we are using the save dev to install is into developer dependencies. These dependencies will not be used by our application, right? So now let's add the scripts for Prettier. We can add two scripts here, one just to check if any file is not formatted and another to format the file and save it. So let's give it an alias of check format and Prettier check and format Prettier, right? Also we need to specify which files we want to check and format, so rest of the files can be ignored. So JS, JSX, TS, TSX and JSON. So let me copy this here as well. Save. Okay, so I also need to add a new file here which would be called dot prettier ignore. So this is basically to ignore some files which we don't want Prettier to format. So let's say I don't want Android files to be formatted, neither iOS, Node modules. So as well as package lock.json, right? Because it is auto-generated file, so we don't need to check it if it's formatted or not. Okay, so let's save this file and now we can run this command. Okay, so npm run check format. So there are problems with some files. Let's see, app.json. In all these files, code style issues are found. So this is how we can check if any files are formatted by Prettier or not. And now let's format them. Let me go into app.tsx and now let me run the format command. npm run format. So as you can see, the file was formatted and here it shows which files were formatted. So these and this, right? Cool, isn't it? So there is one more thing I would suggest you to do. If you're using VS Code, just head to the settings, workspace, and type in format on save. So as you can see, if you check this, it will VS Code will format the code automatically when we save a file. So let's see if it works. Let me just give some spaces here and here and here, and let me try to save it. Control S. It formatted the code, right? Great, isn't it? Now let's move on to the next step, which is ESLint. Okay, so let's install ESLint. Let me clear this. Okay, now we also need to initialize ESLint using this command. So we are using ESLint to check syntax and find problems. We don't need to enforce code style using ESLint because we are using Prettier for that, right? So let's select the second option. And then yes, we are using import and export statements. So this option, and then React. Yes, we use Typescript, and the code does not run on browser, it runs on Node. Yes, so select that, and I want my config file in JavaScript. And we also need to install some plugins and libraries. So yes, so this is my ESLint configuration file. Okay, so let me go into package.json, and as you can see, the script for lint is already here, so we don't need to define it again, right? And this script is going to check the JavaScript and TypeScript files only, right? So let's try running this command now. npm run lint. Okay, so we have two warnings. Let me just remove this line, save it, and run it again. Now we get an error. Error is x is never reassigned, so use const instead. So it's saying that instead of let, we should use a const here because it's not reassigned. So once we do that, that error will be gone as well. So there are just warnings because we have assigned x but we haven't used it, and there is a missing return type on this function app, right? So as you can see, this will detect these kind of errors. That's why we are using ESLint. So let's try to remove these warnings as well. If we remove this, the one warning will be gone, and we need to give a return type to this function. So I can do is react.fc. fc means function component. So this is a return type this is a function component. I'm returning this, right? So let's save it and check again. So as you can see, there are no errors or warnings now. All the warnings are gone. But there is one thing, it says React version not specified in ESLint plugin React settings. So you can read about it on this link, but let me just tell you how to remove this warning. So let's go into the ESLint config file. Let's add a settings React version and detect. So this is for, this will auto detect the React version, right? Okay, this is it. Let's save and let's run the command again. So as you can see, there is no warning. This is gone, right? So one more thing we need to do is to tell ESLint that we are using prettier for the code style formatting. So there is one plugin which we need to install, which is ESLint config prettier. So let's install this. And then we just need to add this line in the ESLint config file here. And that's everything we need to do for ESLint. Now let's move to the next part. Okay, we need to initialize jet now. So jet init, and then we need to configure jet hooks. We need to install Husky, right? So Husky, there are few steps to set up Husky, right? We need to enable, and then we need to, but if you go to the lint stage, remember the next step here is to install lint stage. So if you go to the lint staged JIT page, you'll see that if you run this command, it will install and configure Husky and lint stage depending on the code quality tools from your project. So we only need to make sure that we have prettier and ESLint installed and configured, and this command will install Husky as well as lint staged. So let's just do this, right? So let's run this command, and it is going to configure Husky and lint stage for us, so we don't have to do anything much. So as you can see, it added this script in package.json, and yeah, it created a .husky folder. Inside that folder, it created a pre-commit file. But what is this lint staged? Let's see. In package.json, it also added a new section called lint staged, where types of the files are given and the command. So for prettier right, we need these files, and for ESLint, we need these files, just like we mentioned them here, right? So instead of doing all this manually, we now have Husky to do it automatically when we commit our code, right? So I just need to add this prepare here, npm run type check and lint staged. Save. And now I need to run this prepare command from on pre-commit. npm run prepare. So when we commit our code, first this prepare will run, and in prepare we have written type check and lint stage. So type check, this is going to run, and in lint stage we have prettier and ESLint. Right. So this prettier will run on these files and ESLint will run on these files. But the only difference is because we added it in lint staged, it will only check the changed files, staged files, and not all files. Like, because it's unnecessary to run it on unchanged files before every commit, right? So let's try to commit the code now. Check add dot. Okay, before committing, let's add an error in file. So let me initialize a variable again and reassign it. Okay, and give some spaces in between. Save it. So prettier will format the code when we save it, but this error is not gone, right? So let me try to commit it again. Check commit. This is my first commit. So it's running the tsc command and it failed. This command was run and it failed due to an error, right? And the commit did not happen. The error is also shown here. Type 2 is not assignable. So until we remove all the errors from the app, you cannot commit the code now that we have set up all these things. So let's remove this code and save and try to commit again. Check commit. First commit. So yeah, as you can see, commit is successful. All the files are committed, and let's see what happened. The npx tsc command ran. After that, the ESLint and prettier commands also ran, which we added in the lint stage for these files. And after all those commands succeeded, the commit was done. Great. That is it. I hope you got a basic understanding of how to set up and configure all the tools needed to keep your code clean, error free, and meet the industry standards. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.